Ever stood under a sky so wide your secrets felt small? Here on the Cowboy Alex story. We ride the stories of the West campfire truths, trail dust memories, saloon whispers. Gritty human, sometimes messy. Every tale is a horizon to chase. Subscribe, pull up a stool, and maybe find a little courage for your own frontier. Heat pressed through the torn cotton of her dress. Eliza Hart blinked into a white Arizona sky and tasted grit between her teeth. Blood crept warm down the back of her thigh. A kestrel circled over the junipers, its shadow skimming her face, gone, then back again like a slow blade. The stage had jolted, men had shouted, then the drop. She remembered rocks, the sound of her own breath breaking apart, now only the sun and the endless scrape of wind. She rolled an inch, pain lit her leg like a forge. Pebbles ground into her palms. The earth smelled of iron and sun-baked sage. She tried to gulp air, choked on dust spat, and the spit came out pink. Hoofbeats approached from the glare. One horse steady, a figure stepped into her shade. Tall, hat brim frayed at the edge, braids tied back with rawhide, a turquoise bead at his throat the color of river water. "Do not move," he said, calm voice low. Eliza stilled. He knelt, and the smell of cedar and leather drifted with him. His hands were rough and careful, browned by years of sun. A knife rode his belt with a handle he had carved himself, grooves polished by use. He pushed aside shredded cloth at her thigh and looked. His eyes changed a little. "What is it?" she asked. Her mouth felt made of paper. "You already know," he said. "It is deep, it is dirty. We clean it now." He unstoppered a tin flask. Whiskey stung the air. He met her eyes before he poured. She nodded. When the liquor hit the wound, she bit a strip of leather he pressed between her teeth and saw sparks against the sky. The bird wheeled smaller. "Breathe," he said. She did, in and out slow. His shadow shifted. His hands ground dried leaves between his fingers, made a paste dark and green, pressed it over the torn flesh. The sting thinned into a heavy throb. The air moved against her damp face. "Are you a doctor?" she whispered. "I know what closes and what does not." He tied a clean strip around her leg and knotted it with quick, quiet motions. "Gabriel Stone." "Eliza," she said. "Eliza Hart." He offered the canteen and tipped it. The water was warm, and it was a miracle. She drank until he took it back. "Slow. Your stomach will turn." The light burned hard, then softened as afternoon thinned. He built a small fire under a rock ledge where wind could not tear it to shreds. He set 2 stones and balanced a blackened tin on them. Smoke climbed into the blue and disappeared. The kestrel was gone. Eliza drifted and came back. Her skin felt glassy. Fever lapped in small waves. Gabriel lifted a cloth from the canteen and squeezed water into it. He laid it across her brow and cheek. His knuckles smelled faintly of juniper and smoke. "Where," she managed. "North of Juniper Crossing," he said. "San Francisco Peaks to the west. Verde River not far if you could walk. You cannot, not yet." "How did you find me?" "I followed the wheel marks," he said, "and the blood." She swallowed and looked past his shoulder at the junipers, the silver light along every needle. She tried to pull one knee up. He stopped her with 2 fingers and a small shake of his head. "Why did you jump?" he asked. Not hard, just a question. "Because I wanted to be alive," she said, and let her eyes close. Night came like water poured over a pan. The heat pulled back. Crickets started. Somewhere a coyote called thin and far. Gabriel fed the fire with dry slivers that burned clean. He carved as he watched the knife whispering against pale wood. A shape took form in his palm, wings tight to a body, a hook of a beak. "What is it?" she asked. Her voice was soft as if she feared to break the quiet. "A kestrel," he said. "You looked up at it." "I do not like them," she said. "You can carry the fear until it bites you," he said, still carving. "Or you can make it small enough to hold." He turned the figure and cut away a last thin curl. The bird appeared complete, not born out of the wood, but revealed by what he had taken from it. He set it near the fire to dry and looked at her again. Her lips moved. "Save the books," she murmured. His head tilted. "What books?" Smoke filled her mouth. The world tilted to a hallway with marble floors. She was back in Philadelphia in the Franklin Athenaeum. The East Room glowed orange behind glass, as if the sun had come inside and could not leave. She ran her hand along spines, leather soft with age. David's laughter somewhere near, then the hard crack and the shower of cinders. Somewhere in the haze a man's coat caught the light, a gold watch chain bright as a blade at his vest. Her body tensed. Gabriel laid the cool cloth across her lips, and the memory dissolved into the hiss of wet canvas. "Shh," he said. "You are here." She opened her hand. She had not known she was holding anything. A corner of paper lay stuck to her palm. The edge was black. Strange markings crawled in faded ink, circles and little sunbursts. She stared. Her fingertips felt numb. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "I do not know," she said, the words staggered. He looked at the marks for a breath, then folded the scrap and slid it into the pocket of her bodice. "Keep it," he said, and that was all. Wind mumbled through the trees. The fire sank to a bed of coals. He checked her bandage and pressed gently around the wound. The skin was hot and stiff. He did not say it out loud. He reached for the pouch again and worked more of the green paste into place. His movements were methodical, almost meditative. She watched the side of his face as he concentrated. A few white threads showed in the black of his hair. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. "Drink." She dozed, woke to the sound of bone clicking in the fire as it split. He fed her a strip of jerky torn small with his knife, so she would not have to chew much. He chewed another piece and stared into the dark. Coyotes argued far down the wash. A nightbird called twice. "Those men," she said, "the ones on the road." He did not look at her. "Do not worry about them," he said. "I saw their faces." "So did I." His hand went to the revolver on his hip without thinking. He relaxed his fingers and went back to the carving. He ran a thumb along the kestrel's back and set it on a flat stone where the light touched its eye. "Are you staying?" she asked. "I will stay until you do not die," he said. He did not smile. The wind shifted. Smoke slid sideways. Hoofbeats clicked like coins on rock. Gabriel was standing before Eliza understood she had heard them. He kicked a thin layer of dirt across the coals, and the fire lowered to a red breath. He moved in front of her without thinking about the choice body-balanced hand, a loose curve near his holster. 3 horses stepped into the spill of starlight. The front rider sat straight as a fence post, white beard trimmed neat. Vest, black shirt, bright as bone boots polished despite dust. The silver star on his chest did not need the moon to catch it. "Evening," the man said. His voice was tired and edged. "Judge Harlan Booth, we have been looking a long time for a certain woodcarver." His gaze landed on the knife at Gabriel's belt, then on the small bird on the stone. "Folks call him the Whittler." Gabriel did not move. Eliza felt the earth under her palms and the heat of the buried fire against her shins. The kestrel's wooden eye winked in the low light. The horses breathed. No one spoke. The judge shifted his reins and the leather creaked. "I see you found her first," he said. Gabriel's fingers hung loose at his side. The junipers made soft sounds in the wind, as if they were all breathing for her. "Do not move," the judge said as calmly as Gabriel had said it earlier. "No one needs to bleed more tonight." The kestrel's shadow lifted and slid across the dirt as the fire found a new seam of wood and flared. Judge Harlan Booth kept his gelding steady in the gloom. His deputies hung back a few paces. The silver star at his chest caught a stray flicker from the coals. "We are not here for the woman," he said. His eyes did not leave Gabriel. "We have been tracking a man who carves his marks into wood and into men. Some call him the Whittler." Gabriel did not answer. He stood with his weight low and his right hand close to his hip. Eliza felt the heat of the buried fire through the ground and the pull of fever under her skin. Booth shifted his reins and looked past Gabriel at Eliza. "You injured—" Eliza swallowed. "Yes, he kept me alive." Booth nodded once. Something quiet moved behind his eyes, not pity, more like accounting. He regarded Gabriel again. 3 bodies in Montana, same winter, same brand of wood left behind. Those were not good men. That is for a judge to decide, not a carving knife. Gabriel said, "They burned a camp. They put women in the dirt. There were children." His voice stayed level, but the words had a grain to them. Booth breathed in the resin of juniper and the faint iron of blood. "The law is a straight road," he said. "Justice wanders through the brush." He flicked his fingers toward the coals. "Stamp that down. No one does anything stupid tonight." Gabriel kicked sand until the fire dimmed to a red glow. In the dark, his face smoothed into planes. "I will make you a bargain," Booth said. "Bring the lady to Juniper Crossing. Let the doctor there take a look. You come to Prescott after. 1 week. You do not run. I do not slap irons on you here and risk her dying by inches." Gabriel studied him. The night held. 1 week, he said. 1 week, Booth repeated. He turned his horse. "We will keep a distance. You will not see us. If you break your word, we will find you." He tipped his hat to Eliza. "Miss." They rode off into the junipers. The sound of hooves thinned and went. Eliza let breath out through her teeth. The world tilted and steadied. Gabriel crouched again and checked the bandage. His palm was cool on her shin. "You should sleep," he said. "I will dream of fire," she said. Then wake, he said. She slept between one blink and the next. When Gray edged the rocks, Gabriel had coffee boiling and meat softening in a tin. He helped her sit, supported her back with his forearm, and lifted the cup to her mouth. The coffee was black and bitter and right. She ate what she could. He cleaned her wound. The edges were purple and the heat had not gone down. He met her eyes. "We move slow," he said. She nodded. "How far?" "Half a day to the trading post if we cut west and follow the wash," he said. "You ride with me. The horse will not like it. We ask anyway." They broke camp without leaving a sign. He slid the wooden kestrel deep into his saddlebag. He made a sling of his blanket and leather thongs. He lifted her with a hardness that did not bruise. When he settled in behind his chest, warmed the line of her spine. The smell of horse and sun and cedar hung close. They went at a careful walk through pale grass and stone. Junipers took their time to pass. Once a lizard shot across the wash like a thrown knife. Twice Eliza tasted pennies in her mouth and closed her eyes against the light. Gabriel spoke to the horse in a low voice that sounded like river gravel. By noon, the sky grew heavy with a bank of dark cloud rolling up from the south. The scent of dust shifted to the promise of rain. The trading post showed itself as a long, low shack of weathered boards, with a bell hung by the door and a stack of empty kerosene tins by the stoop. Inside smelled of flour and salt and oil and old tobacco. Shelves held canned peaches. Bullets, coffee coils of rope calico, a cracked mirror that leaned wrong. A man with a thick beard and a limp stood behind the counter. The left side of his face carried the map of a long fire. "Afternoon," he said. The word came with weight. His good hand touched the brim of his hat when he saw Eliza's bandage. His eyes narrowed. "Miss, have we met?" He peered closer, then his jaw went loose. "Franklin Athenaeum, Philadelphia, East Room. I am Owen Pike, Fire Brigade." He tapped his scarred thigh. The sound was hollow. Eliza held his gaze. "You went in 3 times, she said. The marble hallway and the hot breath of the blaze rose in her throat. 4, he said, almost smiling. On the last, I was slower than the ceiling. He reached under the counter and brought up a wrapped bundle, then thought better of it and set it aside. "I seen your brother that night. David. He held papers in his fist like treasure. Said something about keeping at least part safe. I could not make it to him." Eliza felt her stomach go cold. The room tilted. The counter steadied her palm. She saw David's face in the orange light, calm and intent, even as ash fell in his hair. Gabriel set coins down. "Coffee, bandage, salt, if you have clean cloth." Owen looked from Gabriel to the knife on his belt to the small curls of wood clinging to his coat from last night. Something like recognition flickered. He slid a roll of cloth across. "Back room if you want to clean that up," he said. "Bucket there. Pump out back." The bell rang as the door opened. 2 men stepped in from the shifting light. One was tall and raw. The other was narrow and young with hunger set around the eyes. Eliza knew them at once. Boone Carroll's mouth was already shaped into a grin that had no humor in it. Eli Ward blinked and tried to stand smaller. Boone's hand hung easy near his pistol. "Well, look here," he said. "Lady with the bad leg and the half-breed with the knife." He flicked a look at the clerk, and then swept the room with a quick smile. Another man followed them in clean clothes, too clean for the road boots, that never saw a ditch, a watch chain flashing when he moved. He took off his hat and shook rain off like a man worried about his felt, not about anything human. "Miss Hart," he said. "Silas March. We nodded at the same lectures back east. Patron of letters. Unfortunate night at the Athenaeum." His teeth showed. Owen Pike's hand tightened on the counter. Gabriel shifted to put his body between Eliza and the newcomers. His face did not change. Silas saw the movement and smiled wider. "You have something that belongs to me, Miss Hart," he said. "A few pages that slipped their binding before a tragedy. I regret the loss to the collection. I do not regret safeguarding knowledge that could be mishandled by people who shelve by number." Eliza's mouth tasted like dust. "I have nothing of yours," she said. Silas lifted his palms as if to soothe a nervous mare. "No need to lie. I am a generous man. $5,000. Enough to plant a school wherever you please. Books in every corner. Say yes, and we part friends." The room went very quiet. Rain started to tick against the roof. Owen Pike's eyes cut to Eliza and then to the window and back. Gabriel said she said no. Silas sighed the way a teacher sighs at a slow pupil. He nodded at Boone and Eli. "Collect the lady's trunk from the coach depot when you can. For now, search the saddlebags." Boone took a step and found Gabriel already looking at him. The light had thinned. The air smelled of kerosene and coming rain. Boone smiled and put his heel down, then his toe slow. He reached his hand toward the nearest strap. Gabriel drew and fired in one breath. The shot took the glass chimney from the lamp hanging by its hook. The flame coughed and died. Smoke bled up and vanished. For a blink there was nothing. Then the world opened in gray as the door banged and wind shoved rain into the room. Eliza felt Gabriel's hand on her arm. Then they were moving through the spill of water across the porch down into the yard. The horse jolted sideways at the thunder. The bell over the door clanged dull and wild as Owen Pike shouted something inside, and another shot cracked. Gabriel pitched her up into the saddle and swung on behind. The horse jumped the low rail and found the wash with its nose. Rain came in hard curtains. The sky dropped its weight on them. Mud sucked at hooves and flung back. The world narrowed to wet leather and the slam of water and the burn in Eliza's leg. She swayed. Gabriel's arm locked around her waist like a strap. He put the horse into the mouth of a narrow draw, low and rock-walled, where the rain hid in strings instead of sheets. Boone's shot sparked on stone and chipped her boot heel. Eli's ball went high and sang off a ledge. A third shot did not come. The thunder had its own voice. Gabriel turned the horse behind a bulge of rock, slid down, and caught Eliza as she tipped. He dragged her into the undercut where the rock hung over and the rain ran off in ropes. He touched her forehead and then the bandage. The heat there was a furnace. When he peeled the cloth back, the wound showed white and red, at once swollen and glossy. The green paste had held for a while and then gave up where the riding tore it open. He built a small fire low with dry chips from his pouch, and from the heart of a dead juniper he found with his knife. He set his blade in the coals until it glowed dull and then bright. He waited with his breath even. "You will bite this," he said, and gave her his belt. Her eyes filled and then cleared. She nodded. She took the leather between her teeth. It tasted of sweat and horse and salt. He poured whiskey, and the smell made her stomach try to turn. He did not pretend it would be easy. The first touch of heat made her vision break. The pain cracked her wide open. She heard her own sound as if it came from somewhere else. The belt kept her jaw from coming apart. The rain softened. The knife slid and released what had built under the skin. There was a stink from it. He worked without hurry, cleaned with whiskey pressed new paste. He wrapped the leg with clean cloth, made the knot snug and neat, and sat very still until the black at the edge of her sight pulled back. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked up into the rain. "Breathe," he said again. His voice found her through the roar of water. She spit the belt out and gasped, and then laughed once a raw little sound of relief or shock. He lifted the canteen to her lips and she drank. The water tasted like tin and sky. "Why help me?" she asked. The words were small. Her face was wet with rain and tears and sweat all the same temperature. He wiped her cheek with the back of his fingers. "Because you were there," he said. "Because I could." They waited for the thunder to move off. The rain eased to a steady fall that clicked on stone like beads. Gabriel banked the coals and listened. They could not hear boots on rock, not with the water. He moved to the narrow mouth of the draw and peered out, then slid back. "They will think we went for the river," he said. "We do not." He took her weight and helped her to her feet. "Lean on me." They followed the wall where the rock gave a little shelter. The wet air cooled her fevered face. The smell of sage waked up under the rain. The kestrel would have been sheltering somewhere a small knot of feathers under an eve of sky. Eliza pictured the wooden one cupped inside the saddlebag, its small carved eye seeing nothing and everything. They reached a shelf in the rock that made a shallow room. He settled her there and crouched to retie the bandage. Her fingers picked at the hem of her skirt and found a seam. The cloth felt wrong there. She worried at it more from nerves than sense. A fold came loose and something thin slid free and dropped into her palm. It was a scrap of paper edges singed like a moth's wing. Lines ran in circles and crossed one another, not letters, more like a compass had gone mad. Little suns at the points, faded ink. Her breath stopped. Gabriel saw the change in her face and held still. He put his hand under hers and took the fragment with care. Rain whispered around them. He lifted it closer to the half-light and narrowed his eyes. His thumb traced the ring of marks and paused above a symbol that did not belong in any prayer book. The wind touched the paper and made it shiver in his fingers. He looked up at Eliza. The rain drummed. His face did not tell her anything, but his eyes had sharpened. Gabriel turned the fragment so the light could touch the faint ink. Circles within circles. Small suns set at the points. A curl shaped like the tail of some forgotten letter. He did not smile. He folded the scrap once and slid it into his shirt above his heart, and then he looked past Eliza into the rain. "We cannot stay here," he said. They moved along the wall where the stone overhung and the rain thinned to strings. The downpour eased. The wash below hissed and writhed. The air smelled like wet dust and juniper pitch. Eliza leaned into him and kept her weight on his hip. Her leg throbbed in slow, angry beats. Above them, a kestrel broke from a ledge and shot into the gray like a thrown ember. They reached a bend where the draw opened. The rain had etched new lines down the bank. Fresh tracks cut the mud. One set came from the direction of the trading post and stopped not far from where they stood. A cigarette stub lay mashed into the wet with a little ring of ash around it. "Back," Gabriel said. It was too late. A voice slid out of the brush ahead, pleasant like a man offering a chair. "Miss Hart, Mr. Stone, let us not stumble around in the wet. There is a dry roof within a mile." Silas March stepped into view under a slicker the color of old brass. Boone came from the other side with his hat tipped low and his pistol out. Eli Ward hovered behind him, jaw-tight eyes on the ground gun held wrong. Gabriel's hand did not reach for his holster. He set himself between Eliza and the guns and did not move any closer. "Low ground is not your friend," Silas said. "Gullies teach hard lessons. Come along now. No one has to bruise more than necessary." Boone lifted his pistol a fraction. "Hands where I can see them." Gabriel lifted his hands. Eli came forward with a length of rope, his mouth a flat line. He looped Gabriel's wrists and cinched the knot. He swallowed and looked at Eliza. "I am sorry, ma'am," he murmured too low for Boone to hear. His fingers were clumsy. Gabriel turned his wrists just enough at the right moment. The rope sat against skin, snug but not perfect. Silas took Eliza's elbow as if he were a gentleman leading a lady to a carriage. She pulled her arm away. He smiled as if he admired the decorum. They climbed out of the draw and cut across a low mesa scattered with black rocks. Rain still fell fine and even. The sky was the color of tin. The roof Silas had promised turned out to be the collapsed shed of an old line camp with a small cabin leaning into a windbreak of bony cottonwoods. The door gave after Boone shouldered it twice. Inside there was a table, a broken chair, and a window with no glass. Dust rose and stuck to wet coats. "Put her on the chair," Silas said. "Tie him to the post." They fixed Gabriel to the upright in the center of the room. Eli did the work, hands shaking, a little eyes pointed somewhere over Gabriel's shoulder. Boone checked the knots with a tug that pulled skin. He grinned when he felt the give. He made the rope bite once more for his own satisfaction. Silas hung his slicker on a peg. He set his hat on the table. The watch chain lay across his vest like a gold swallow. He reached into Gabriel's saddlebag and drew out the wooden kestrel. He turned it in his hand and nodded at the neat work. "Clever man," he said. "I appreciate craft. This one is hollow." He twisted the head. It turned with a tiny click and came free. From the bird's body he drew a folded scrap of parchment. The room had no sound for a beat. Eliza saw the small shape in his fingers and could hear her own breath. Silas unfolded the parchment and smiled with his eyes. "There we are," he said. Ink faded nicely. Edges singed. The past kept in a bird. It is almost poetic. Eliza stared at the page. Her chest went tight. Gabriel watched Silas's face rather than the paper. "Read it," Silas said to Eliza. "Tell me what you see. I so enjoy a pupil who knows the value of her books." Eliza met his gaze. "It is not yours," she said. "It never was." Silas sighed and turned his attention to Gabriel. "What a waste," he said. "A man who knows how to remove the useless material to find the form, yet he wastes his time assigning meaning to innocence. Tell me how you forged the aging Mr. Stone. Coffee and smoke, I would guess. Walnut and iron for the ink. A little fat rubbed in to break the surface." Gabriel kept his breath even. "You just told me," he said. Silas chuckled. "You have a decent eye. Not enough. You reversed 2 correspondences. You misspelled a phrase no monk would misspell. I know the codex as I know the lines on my palm. I did not need your help to spot a forgery." He tapped the page with one finger. "This is not the page your brother died for, Miss Hart. It is a child's copy." Eliza felt a small live thing move in her chest and settle. She did not let it show on her face. Silas folded the forgery and slipped it into his pocket anyway. "But it served you. It told me what I needed to know. The real page exists. Where is it?" Gabriel said nothing. Silas tilted his head. "Another question, then. How many pages did he tear?" Eliza stared back. She would not give him David's number. Silas's mouth flattened a little. "We will take a different route." He slipped a small case from his inner coat. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay a surgeon's scalpel that caught the weak light like a fish under clear water. He held it as if it were a pen. The body tells truths that the tongue will not. Owen Pike's face came to Eliza's mind, the way his knuckles had gone white. She forced her body still. "You want knowledge?" Gabriel said. His voice cut across the room, clean and plain. "Here is some. The page you want is not here. I sent it to Judge Booth. A prospector took it this morning. He was heading to Prescott for assay. I paid him to ride straight to the courthouse with a parcel, waxed leather, my mark on the tie. He will walk it in." Silas turned his head like a hawk, considering a twitch in the grass. "You expect me to believe you handed a stranger a prize and trusted the desert to deliver," he said. "I believe the desert carries news better than men like you think," Gabriel said. His eyes did not leave Silas's. Silas weighed the words. The scalpel rested against his palm and did not move. "Describe the page," he said quietly. "Convince me that you did more than smudge ink on a scrap." Gabriel looked at Eliza, then at Silas. "Concentric circles," he said, "at the cardinal points symbols that do not belong to any church. A phrase in late Latin around the outer ring that translates several different ways depending on who you want to save. 3 lines broken short at the bottom where the page was torn." Silas watched his face for any slip. He did not find one. He put the scalpel back into its case with a neat motion. He closed the case and placed it on the table without noise. "If Booth has it, he will discover what it contains," Silas said. "He will keep it safe in a drawer with other curiosities until a man with a better imagination asks the right questions." He set his hands flat on the table. "I do not like waiting. I am going to collect something of value here and now." He turned and walked to Eliza. He leaned closer, and she could smell the stiff soap on his collar and the faint rot of wet leather. "Where is the rest of it?" he asked softly. "You carry it like a woman carries a secret, in a seam, in a book, in a hem. You pulled something loose out there under the rock. I saw your fingers. Show me." Eliza met him with silence. A small tremor went through her leg, more from anger than pain. Silas nodded, as if she had answered an academic problem wrong. He straightened and motioned to Boone. "Bring the trunk from the depot," he said. "Bring the saddlebags. We are done pretending to be gentlemen." Rain deepened for a minute, and then leveled out. Eli shifted his weight from foot to foot and watched the floor. Boone rolled his shoulder and tipped his hat and went. Silas took the case again and balanced it in his hand. He glanced at Gabriel's wrists, then at the rope. He walked over and pressed a thumb against the knot. It did not move. He smiled as if he had solved a small puzzle that had given him pleasure. "Do not think too hard, Mr. Stone," he said. "Thinking has not helped you much." He stepped back and set the case on the table a second time. His hand reached to his boot and drew a second blade shorter with a straight edge. He held it up and watched Eliza watch it. Eli flinched at the knock that followed. 3 raps, quick and flat, on the cabin door. Everyone looked that way at once. Silas lifted a finger to his lips and crossed to the door. He put his ear to the wood for a breath, and then opened it with care. Rain and a figure in a dark coat filled the gap. The man stood with his shoulders wet and his face calm. He did not wear a star on his chest, but authority lived in how he held himself. "Afternoon," he said. His voice stayed low. "Deputy Sam Cutter. Judge Booth asks after a traveler and her escort. He also asks why a camp on the edge of town smells like kerosene and fear." Silas blinked once, and in that space the room stretched tight as a wire. Eli's grip loosened. Gabriel's fingers shifted almost nothing against the rope. The rain spoke on the roof, steady and patient. Silas March held the door half open and studied the man on the step. Rain silvered the shoulders of the deputy's coat. The smell of wet dust and lamp oil slid into the room. "Afternoon," Deputy Sam Cutter said again. He lifted his hat with 2 fingers and let the rain hit his hair. "Judge Booth sent me. A woman and her escort did not reach town. I am asking simple questions." Silas's smile returned like it lived close to the surface. "Strays find shelter. We found this one empty," he said. "You will want the road east. If you ride hard, you can catch daylight to the crossing." Sam's eyes moved once across Silas's shoulder, quick and steady, taking the room in, then back to Silas's face. He kept his hands quiet and low. "I will start with this shelter," he said. "Best to clear one door before knocking on the next." Silas eased the door wider, but his body stayed in the gap. "You should not track Rain into a stranger's floor," he said. Behind him, Gabriel shifted his weight against the rope and felt fibers give a hair's breadth. Eli stood to one side, jaw-tight eyes on the table where the scalpel case lay. Eliza pressed her palm flat on the broken chair and felt the wood splinter against her skin. The room held its breath. A shout came from the cottonwoods. Another voice answered farther off. A second later, a shot cracked bright and hard. Silas flinched and moved before he chose to move. The door blew wide under Sam Cutter's shoulder, and a wet gust rode in. Sam stepped through with his revolver already up, and two more men swung around the door behind him with their guns leveled. Their coats ran water on the boards. "Hands," Sam said quietly. Silas reached for the table with careful calm and came up with nothing in his grip. His eyes slid to Eliza and then to Gabriel. Boone barreled through the back doorway from the lean-to carrying a dented trunk and a grin. He stopped dead at the sight of the guns, then swung his pistol toward Sam. Gabriel moved first. He pushed against the rope and felt slack where Eli's clumsy knot had left a lip. His right hand slipped free. Eli stared, then did a thing that surprised even his own body. He grabbed Boone's wrist and yanked it down. Boone's shot tore a splinter from the table edge instead of taking Sam in the face. Sam fired once. Boone folded as if his leg had vanished from under him. He went down on one knee, teeth-bared gun skittering. Another deputy swept in, booted the pistol away, and put a knee to Boone's shoulder. Silas crossed the room in 2 long steps. He did not reach for the scalpel case. He went for Eliza with his empty hand fast and sure, meaning to take her throat with his knuckles and his arm as a bar. Gabriel's left hand was still tied, his body pinned to the post, but his right hand was free, and his knife lay on the floor where Boone's fall had kicked it. He could not reach it. His eyes found the only thing that would fly true. The wooden kestrel sat on the table, where Silas had left it small and tight and whole again with its head replaced. Gabriel snatched it. The bird was balanced just enough. He threw with a motion born out of months of taking wood to shape and years of throwing knives at trees to still his thoughts. The kestrel hit Silas in the meat of the shoulder with a dull, hard sound. It drove into him point first like a beak and stole his breath. He staggered and turned by reflex toward the pain. Eliza slid off the chair and away. Sam was already moving. He closed the space and seized Silas's wrist. The scalpel that Silas had not held clattered anyway when Sam slammed him into the wall. The second deputy took Silas's other arm and bent it until the hand opened. Iron cuff kissed skin. The sound was small and final. Boone cursed on the floor and tried to rise and failed. The deputy with his knee in Boone's back said nothing and tightened down. Eli had let go when the shot went off. He stood with his hands out from his sides. His eyes were on Eliza. He put his gun on the floor and nudged it away with his toe. Outside, hooves and voices ran together and then settled into a ring. The rain beat on the roof and ran down the log seams in thin threads. Judge Harlan Booth stepped in through the open door rain on his hat-brim coat, dark and neat star dull in the gray. He took in the room in a single, slow look. His eyes rested on Eliza's bandage on Gabriel's rope-burned wrists, on Silas's cuffed hands, on the wooden bird stuck at an angle in Silas's coat. His mouth did not change. "Mr. March," he said. He might have been reading a name off a ledger. "I have a parcel at my office this morning wrapped in waxed leather. It contains a page written in a hand that has not lived for centuries. It came with a letter that speaks of a library in Philadelphia and a man who does not count other men by the uniform they wore. That letter bears a mark that I also have on a pocket knife cut from mesquite." Silas said nothing. His breath came in tight pieces. Blood spread under the wood where the kestrel had entered a small red flower. Booth looked at Sam. "Bring him in," he said, "and bring the other one and the boy behind him." Sam's glance flicked to Eli. "Eli Ward," he said. "Step forward." Eli did. His hands shook. He kept his eyes on Booth's boots. "Where is the rest of it?" Booth asked. His voice stayed even. "The trunk can tell me some. I want to hear the truth from a mouth." Eli swallowed. "I took what he told me to take," he said, and dipped his head toward Silas. "I saw no pages, just a book with green cloth, leaves of grass." He tossed it aside like trash when there was nothing between the covers. Eliza's attention snapped to the trunk. It lay on its side, wet and scuffed from the lean-to. The lock had sprung. The lid had been pried and beaten and pried again. Clothes lay tumbled, a dress torn free, a packet of letters wrapped with string. At the bottom, the green cloth volume she had packed in Philadelphia lay face-down corner, bubbled from water. She reached for it, and Sam stopped her with a hand open, not touching only there. He lifted the book himself and set it on the table. Water dripped from the corner. He opened it. The pages were clean, no pocket cut into the spine, no seam. Sam flipped it to the backboard. The cloth inside carried a faint line of stitch that did not belong there. He pinched the corner and pulled. The board lifted in his hand. Someone had skived out a pocket behind the cloth and glued the cloth flat. Water had loosened the glue. A thin sheaf lay flat in the space sealed in waxed paper. Ink bled at the edge where wet had touched it. The seal held. The room went silent again. Eliza's breath trembled. She could not make herself reach for it. Sam set the book down and slid the packet toward Booth. Booth did not open it. He looked at Silas. "You will ride east in irons," Booth said. "There is a judge in Philadelphia who knows what to do when a man turns a place of learning into a pyre. You took lives. You will answer for them." Silas's face smoothed into something like relief. People who love control often relax a little when the road narrows. He lifted his chin a fraction. He looked at Eliza and let his mouth almost smile. "Knowledge resists small hands," he said. "You were never its keeper." Eliza felt heat rise along her neck. She did not speak. She did not need to. Booth did it for her without looking away from Silas. "Knowledge belongs where it can make people stand straighter," Booth said, "not where it teaches a man how to burn better." He gestured with 2 fingers. The deputies hauled Silas to his feet. The wooden bird fell from his coat and hit the floor with a soft knock. Gabriel bent, picked it up, and set it on the table. He wiped blood from the beak with his thumb and did not look at Silas. Boone snarled on the floor. "You going to let the breed walk?" he spat. He carved 3 men into the dirt. Booth turned and regarded Gabriel. Rain ticked on the sill and slid down in threads. The judge's hand touched the brim of his hat and stayed there as if he were thinking of taking it off and decided against it. "I have read the letters from Crow women who buried children," he said. "I have read the names of the men you left on that road. There is a line between vengeance and a thing done when the law has failed to find its boots. I will not praise you for it. I will not hunt you for it." He looked down at the rope burns, then at Eliza's bandage. "You will answer my summons. You will sit in my office and tell me how to keep this business from finding fire again. For now, you will help the doctor keep this woman alive." Gabriel did not move for a long second. Then he nodded once. "All right," he said. Booth tipped his chin to Sam. "Get Mr. March out," he said. "Take Boone, too. Patch him enough for a cell." He looked back at Eli. "You dropped your gun when the door opened," he said. "You grabbed a man who was set to kill. The court will hear that. You have a son who needs a school. You will plead, and you will work off what you owe." Eli's eyes filled, then dried, then filled again. He nodded hard. "Yes, sir," he said. Owen Pike appeared at the door, soaked to the bone hat in his hand. He had run without remembering his limp. He took in the irons and the packet on the table and Eliza's face and let out a breath he had been holding for years. "I told myself I was wrong about that night," he said. "Turns out I was not." "You were not," Booth said. Sam cut the rope at Gabriel's left wrist. The fibers fell. Blood came back into the hand in a dull rush. Gabriel flexed his fingers, and the ache rose and faded. He took 2 steps, and the room swam a little. He steadied on the table edge. Eliza closed her hand around his forearm without thinking. His skin was warm and damp from the rain. The rain began to ease. Sound changed as the drops thinned. Outside, men's voices moved in work rhythms instead of fight rhythms. A wheel creaked. A horse blew air through its lips and shook its head. Booth picked up the wax packet and the green book. He set the packet into the inner pocket of his coat and handed the book to Eliza. The cloth was heavy with water. She took it and held it against her side. "There is a doctor on the north side of the street," Booth said. "He will not ask many questions." He stepped back to the door and lifted his face into the wet. He put his hat on, and the brim made a small roof over his eyes. He looked at Sam. "Walk them in," he said. Sam nodded. He turned to Eliza. "Can you stand?" he asked. "I can," she said. Her voice did not shake. She tried to rise, and her leg faltered. Gabriel put his shoulder under her hand. The 2 of them stepped out into the soft rain. The cottonwoods shivered. Mud took their weight and gave it back. Behind them, deputies led Silas March into the gray evening with iron bright against wet cloth. 2 weeks after the rain morning laid a clean light over Juniper Crossing. Mud had dried to pale plates in the street. The air held the faint cool of the San Francisco peaks and the farther scents of horses' yeast and coal smoke. The bell at the small school rang once. Children climbed the steps with slates against their chests and hair still damp from a hurried wash. Eliza Hart stood on the porch and felt the pull of a new scar at her thigh when she shifted her weight. The ache was a quiet thing now. She breathed, and the room behind her smelled of chalk and pine shavings. A kestrel clung to the ridgepole for a moment, small and still, then lifted and slid into the blue. Thomas Ward hovered at the doorway until she nodded. He slipped past with his slate held straight and took a seat in the back row. He looked at the board with the seriousness of a man twice his age. Outside, Eli Ward leaned against the rail with his hat in his hands. He watched his boy sit and settle. He did not meet Eliza's eyes, but when she glanced his way, he gave an awkward half-bow and moved off toward the street where a deputy waited to walk him to the courthouse. His mouth drew into a line that was not pride and not shame, something of both. Owen Pike came across the yard with a satchel under his arm and a limping step that had learned a different rhythm. He tipped his hat and grinned with one half of his mouth. "Morning delivery," he said. He set the satchel on the porch and opened it. Primers from Prescott, a speller, a copy of Robinson Crusoe with a water stain like a ghosted map. "Thank you," Eliza said. Owen nodded. The scars on his hand shone pale in the sun. He looked past her at the empty shelf along the back wall. "We can run a plank the length of it," he said. "Pine is cheap. If you want it to hold, I have a fix with dowels." She heard the hum of his craft in the way he spoke. She smiled. "I want it to hold." He tilted his head toward the street. I walked past Judge Booth's office. He had 3 small bundles on his desk, waxed paper over what looked like old skins, labels neat as a school copy, smelled like oil and glue in there. He closed the drawer when he saw me. Owen's eyes went to the peaks and back. Things have a place to go. Eliza pictured the judge's steady hands and the neat coil of his pen strokes. She thought of water darkening a bookboard until a pocket loosed of a floorboard in the line camp that had warped just enough to show a seam of a man in irons, doing his best to seem unbothered. On the far side of the yard, a crate bumped down from a wagon bed. Gabriel Stone carried it up the path as if it had handles only he could see. His shirt was clean and worn thin where rope had bitten. A smear of clay marked one sleeve near the elbow. He set the crate on the porch and straightened. The smell of fresh hay clung to him, and a warmer smell of horse. Sun picked a silver thread in his hair. "Mrs. Peterson found these in her attic," he said. "Sermons, mostly, some Plutarch, a book with recipes that call for lard and patience." "Both are useful," Eliza said. He looked past her shoulder at the children settling, the click of slate on desk, the scrape of a chair leg, the whisper of breath. His mouth softened. He touched the brim of his hat to Owen, who touched his back. Then Gabriel bent to the crate again and eased it inside. He did not step far into the room. The boards creaked under his weight, and the children turned to look at him. He froze for a heartbeat, then lifted one hand in an uncertain greeting. A few of the smaller ones waved back as if greeting a cousin. On Judge Booth's porch across the street, a courier mounted a wiry horse and took a leather pouch from the judge. Booth spoke to him for a terse minute, and the rider nodded and set his heels to the horse. The animal clattered through a patch of dried mud and moved toward the road east, head down steady. Booth stood, watched a breath, then turned and went back inside. His face did not show pride. It did not need to. Gabriel came back to the porch with empty hands. Eliza reached into her pocket. Wood touched her fingers smooth, where her thumb had run it over and over in the last week. She brought out a small bird the size of her palm. The curve of the head was less sure than his. The wing lines were simple and clean. "I tried," she said. "It is not your hand, but it holds what I could manage." He took the kestrel and turned it with his fingertips. He found the slight unevenness at the base of the wing and did not correct it. He closed his hand around the bird and the wood warmed against his skin. "You took away what did not belong," he said. "I am learning," she said. He tucked the bird into the pocket of his coat near the turquoise bead that caught the light and made a brief river on the cloth. He glanced at her leg. "Doctor, bandage stays dry today," she said. He was kind. "Good," he said. He looked toward the corrals at the edge of town. Wilson's mare did what she needed to do at dawn. A filly, 4 legs under her like springs. I had to dig a shallow trench to get her right. The ground still holds water. Eliza pictured Gabriel in the gray light, hands at work, voice low at a skittish head, the smell of birth and clay. The world had more ways to be made and remade than she had believed when she left Philadelphia. She nodded to the lintel above the door. Near the corner, a tiny shape looked out from the wood, an owl no bigger than a coin. The cuts were shallow and sure. He followed her gaze, and a small smile settled on his face. "Keeps watch," he said. "Good," she said again. Her hand rested for a moment on the carved feather. The pine felt warm from the sun. Inside the room waited. She stepped to the threshold and called the names on the roll. Voices answered. She set a lesson on the board in a careful hand. Letters stood in chalk like small fences in a field. Behind her, the porch boards gave a soft complaint as Gabriel shifted his weight. "Read with me," she said. 20 voices rose in a rough unison that smoothed as they reached the ends of lines. The sound slid out the window and across the yard and into the street where men were already putting their shoulders to the day. The bell on a mule's harness rang once. A hammer picked up a measured tap along a frame. The smell of bread lifted from a house with white curtains. The sky had the clear look that comes after the earth drinks, with a far line of cloud drawing soft shadows across the peaks. When she finished with the first lesson, Eliza turned a page and set the next. Thomas Ward wrote each letter twice. He pressed too hard and snapped a small corner of chalk. He looked at it as if it had betrayed him, and then picked up the larger piece with a set jaw. Gabriel leaned a shoulder against the porch post and watched the children move. A girl in the front row tucked a loose curl behind her ear, and then forgot it. A boy halfway back mouthed the words while his hand lagged. A wren bounced on the fence and scolded some invisible trespasser. The world held still and valid. Owen Pike came in with a board across his shoulder and a small bag of dowels at his belt. He set the board on sawhorses and measured the back wall with a length of twine. He hummed an old tune out of Philadelphia that had lost its city names and kept its beat. Eliza paused at the window and looked out. Gabriel lifted 2 fingers. She answered with the same and went back to her chalk. Near the end of the morning, the kestrel returned, skimmed the yard, and landed high on the church crosspiece for a breath. It shook water from its feathers, as if rain still clung where the sun could not see. Then it rose and drew a bright line across the sky. The light found the owl cut into the lintel and set it to a small shine. Eliza breathed, and the room breathed with her. She touched the page, and the chalk answered her hand. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.